Hey everyone, got some news to share today about Bizarre Insights. Basically, it's shutting down. That is a result of the third-party tooling ban, but no, I didn't receive a DMCA. I've actually had some great conversations with Tempo Storm. If things go according to plan, I might actually be joining their team to help them build out tooling. So, I mean, hopefully that goes ahead. But yeah, Tempo Storm do actually care a great bit about this. I've spoken to them and I've spoken to the party that is going to be building their API. All very positive conversations. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. So as to why I created this video, I mean, yeah, I needed to tell you that, but this is like, as much for me as it is for anyone else. I spent the last 2.5 months full time building Bizarre Insights. So I wanted to create a video that's, I guess, a bit of a homage to the project. And I'll run through a little bit about how I built it, how it works. I won't dive into anything that's like private about the bazaar. Like I've made that a point from the get go that I'm not going to share that. Like this is a competitive online game, and from the very start, I wanted to build something that helps the community, not something that could like harm it. So I won't be sharing anything too detailed about the bazaar, but just more stuff about the development and how I ended up building Bizarre Insights. So I guess I'll tell the story a little bit about how we ended up here, which was the last release of Bizarre Insights. This I launched a feature called Battlegraph, which lets you see like a replay, I guess a recap of sorts of your battle and whatever. Not here to really talk about that, more the development. So I guess we'll go back to the start. Yeah, not that far actually. I think November 2024 ought to do it. Um, okay, yes, much better. So I was attending this concert with my brother, who actually introduced me to the bazaar. Um, this was like a all-day event, and there was downtime between the artists. So in between the artists, I was playing the bazaar on my mobile phone. In between interruptions from my type 1 diabetic daughter's CGM notifications. Anyway, so no, I'm not holding out on you. I don't have a mobile build of the bazaar up my sleeve. This is just streamed from my computer to my device. Actually works quite well. I'm using Sunshine as the server and Moonlight as the client on my phone. So maybe that can tide you over until official release comes out. Anyway, my brother sort of was talking to me about HS Tracker and how there wasn't yet anything like that for the bazaar. So he incited me to, I guess, work on this. The next day, I sent him this message, which, yeah, I had started reverse engineering the bazaar. Now, I don't know that this would be easy for anyone. I happen to have sort of an extensive background in reverse engineering. Some of those projects have like even had millions of downloads. So at the start of 2024, I was working for a company called Ender, where we built game servers for kids to socialize and play online safely. So these were like moderated servers. And the way it worked is kids played the game, but they also joined simultaneously a voice call that was moderated by adults. Um, so we had all this like functionality. We built out breakout rooms and all this sort of extensive web infrastructure. So for years, I've been working for startups in, I guess, sort of the intersection of gaming and recently education, but also other industries as well. And like for basically as long as I can remember, I've been working like 60 plus hours, typically over 80, sometimes 100. So I was feeling pretty burnt out and was like, okay, I'm gonna quit this job. Take some time off to spend with my family. I've got 3 daughters, so I wanted to have some more family time. But naturally, I can't help myself. So instead of, I mean, I was spending family time, yes, but I had to do stuff. So I picked up my own card game, which I hadn't touched in a while. I started building this in 2018, I believe, maybe 2017. Um, this is it here. It's built-in tabletop simulator. I actually consult for Berserk Games on the side. They're the makers of Tabletop Simulator. Um, it's a fully functional digital card game. I'm actually even playing an AI here, so Like, yeah, it's as is the case with me, it's just like probably drastically over engineered. Okay, so that was one of the projects I was building in the downtime. The other thing that I was working on was a project. My daughter's favorite game is Overcooked, um, and I wanted to teach her coding principles, I guess. So what I've done here is I've modded Overcooked to replace the second player with like a scripting platform uh, that can teach basic coding constructs. Works pretty well. Again, drastically over engineered and a bunch of reverse engineering. So I've no, and that's like built with Unity, which is how the bazaar works. So it's what the bazaar uses. So I have, I guess, a lot of experience reverse engineering. So when my brother, challenged me to build something for the bazaar, naturally I couldn't resist, and it didn't take me long to have something up and running. In fact, the day after that Facebook message, I had a simple proxy running that was sort of like sitting between the bazaar and the local app. Didn't yet have any web infrastructure. So it was initially just a Mac app. Then I started working on reverse engineering the bazaar's protocols, which I won't go into. But then I had to get things working with a database. So I picked an open source project called Umami, which honestly was probably a mistake in the end. It didn't really do what I wanted it to do. It's probably a good project for people who need precisely what it does, but it doesn't. It's yeah, just wasn't really useful. I had to heavily modify it. It was not nearly performant enough. Um, so, for example, like when I finally got to deploy this on Vercel, it's a Next.js app. Um, the analytics were on target to charge me like $1,000 US a month with like hardly any users. This was like a week after launching. I was already on target for by the end of the month to be 1,000 USD. So I was like, whoa, need to fix this. So I wanted to deploy the whole thing to Cloudflare, played around with that for a bit, but Cloudflare's Next.js hosting toolkit or library, whatever it is they've got, is pretty immature. Maybe it's better now, but when I tried, it just did not work. Had like so many issues. So what I ended up doing was writing a separate analytics submission endpoint that was custom built, running on Cloudflare. Nothing to do with Umami. It was writing to the database for Umami, but it was like completely custom. And this is interesting because Cloudflare work as a serverless technology. So for any of the devs out there, maybe you'll understand this. Basically, I was using Prisma to connect to the database in Vercel, but Prisma in a serverless environment is just really bad at the moment. It's probably too complicated to get into, but basically I had to rip out Prisma and use Soupbase's like web APIs to connect to the database. That actually worked wonderful because the way that Cloudflare bill is by CPU usage rather than wall clock time. So AWS, for example, their serverless like Lambda bills by wall clock time. Cloudflare are way cheaper for this sort of use case because even if my database was slow, the endpoint would suspend waiting on the database. So I'm not being billed while I'm suspended and the database is off doing its thing. I'd only be charged for the time sort of preparing that request for the database, which there was a bit of work and, sort of, and then the response. But like substantially cheaper to the point that like, I think the most I've been charged for that Cloudflare worker is $7. And I think it's like $5 just even to have Cloudflare workers. So basically just utilizing the free tier there. Like a huge improvement. So that's one of the things that I built. Now, that's part of the web infrastructure. Like I have a Superbase backend. I'll just give you a quick look at what the database sort of looks like. And you can see, well, if you knew anything about Umami, which I doubt anyone does, but this is actually a customized database structure. For example, Umami doesn't let you store like complex JSON data like this, which is what I've added here. So at this point, I've got Superbase storing the data. I've got Cloudflare handling the submission and Vercel handling the web page. At one stage, I had some AWS stuff in there as well. I was using an S3 bucket, but I actually moved that across to Cloudflare R2, which is compatible with AWS S3. It's a storage place. You just store big blobs of data there. So all the images, and I'll get to that actually, all the images are stored in a Cloudflare bucket and distributed by Cloudflare's content delivery network, which is what allows it to perform pretty well. Now, getting the images is like something that I was also, I guess, pretty proud of. Um, I didn't just want to, like, the images are obviously in the game. Like, I didn't just want to rip the images though, because the game actually renders the art using a complex pipeline that you wouldn't try replicate on the web. You potentially could, but it would just be massively overkill, even for me. So, um, what I essentially did was like capture from the game the components that make up the different cards. So I wanted the card frames, I wanted like the animated card frames, and each card has like variants, like enchantment variants. As much as I think like websites like How Bizarre are awesome and like they've done a great job, the way that they represent the cards looks kind of, I don't know, pretty bad, I reckon. But like everything else there's good, so that's not a supposed to be a slide. It's just that, you know, this took a lot of effort. Like, so I built some tooling that basically captured frames of every single card, every single enchantment variant, all the card frames, the skills, um, huge amounts of data. So to the point that it would take over 24 hours to capture everything, and it would fill up more than my 2 terabyte disk on my Mac could store. So I actually had to run a process that grabbed those raw images and converted them to compressed videos or WebP files, essentially like animated GIFs, essentially, but better. And it had to run simultaneously to the process that was performing the capture so that I didn't run out of disk space, which it did at one point. But anyway, that's how it works. So fair bit of work even just to get those images appearing nicely. And it looked really cool, but actually it was even the cause of some slight performance issues on some people's computers, all those animated images. So yeah, bit of a trade-off there. Beyond that, so I had to write other scripts, for example. So if I wanted to replay a run, rather than like me playing the game over and over and then like encountering a bug or trying to build out a feature as I'm working on a feature, like I would have to do the same thing over and over again if I was trying to implement some new part, some feature built on a different part of the Bazaar's protocol. So that's not what I did. I actually have this system that captures all the communication, like the proxying stuff, and it just writes it to a file. And I have another system that lets me replay those like really, really quickly. So if I stuff up, or if there's like a bug report, I can replay people's log files, their session captures. So initially, those were actually just sitting on everyone's computer. It wasn't actually till very recently that I made a change that actually uploads them to another bucket on Cloudflare, because some users had over 500 runs. So that's potentially a lot of data on their computer. I think it's 11 gig of sessions stored on in the bucket now, and that's compressed. So on computers, they weren't compressed; they were using more space, distributed across lots of users. So I wasn't using 11 gig on one user's computer, but still, the idea of me having those sessions is that when there's bug reports, I can replay the session and go, oh, okay, there's something wrong here. I can fix it. And also potentially, because it's like the raw session capture, like as I added new features like battle graph, in theory, I could replay those sessions again to get that new data that's necessary for battle graph. And like just going into battle graph, for example, I'm not going to talk about how the reverse engineering aspect works, but just the representation of that, that's a lot of data, an entire, 30-second battle approximately, give or take, many frames of combat. So I had to represent that in a way that's like actually more compact than the Bazaar represents it itself. They probably could represent it. They do a good job, but they could actually make it more compact because I was able to. Obviously, I'm not using all the stuff they use, but there's some things that could probably be done. They might have very good reasons for not doing it. But yeah, I was able to basically shrink that down in size, compress it, base64 encode it, and put it in the database so that when you go and look at your runs, you can click on each of the battles and get these nice, cool graphs. I guess like along the way, there was like other challenges like code signing on Apple and Windows. Like they both, for starters, cost money. Apple will have their like $100 a year program or something like that they sign up to. Windows was a real challenge. They have archaic, ridiculous processes. Fortunately, just in the last 12 months or so, they've launched a new process in Azure that lets you do like cloud signing. So I've utilized that, but even the sign up process for that was like just mental. Initially, just like kept getting rejected for things that made no sense. I think what they approved me with actually was incorrect information. They kept saying my correct information was wrong, and now they've approved me with slightly incorrect information. It's not going to impact anything. It's just like to do with like my legal entity. But I'm like, whatever. So eventually I got it approved to sign the Windows build. So I think initially some people were like, their virus program is like flagging it or something like that. Nothing to do with the virus. It's just that the build wasn't signed, which, it should be. So yeah, there was like a whole heap of stuff, I guess, to put the project together. Like maybe I'll just quickly like even just like look through the code like a little bit. I'm not gonna go into detail, but like just to give you an idea of like the scale. Here's like the front end rendering. So heaps of different components make up the visuals, like the ability to display items and the hands and skills, and it's just like it's actually like a sizable amount of code for 2.5 months work. Maybe what I'll do in the future, if you are interested in this kind of stuff, maybe I'll release some more videos reverse engineering, not the Bazaar, but probably Overcooked. So it's a game that doesn't have like a competitive online component to it, or at least not like the Bazaar does. Like that's sort of like integral to the Bazaar. So maybe I can do some videos about how I built my little scripting engine in Overcooked. I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe some more videos about my card game or whatever. So if you are interested in that stuff, like follow me on YouTube. I don't think I have any followers right now, maybe 2 or something like that. Maybe I'll drop my Twitch link as well. I've streamed once ever, which was like last week, something like that. So yeah, I don't know, maybe getting a few people on Twitch. Maybe I'll post some announcements there. And of course, I'm going to keep the Bizarre Insights Discord up. So, you can follow along with things. And maybe one day Bizarre Insights will come back in some form using the official APIs. So, if you are interested in that, or maybe announcements related to this stuff, people can just chat about it in there. But otherwise, it's been fun. Thanks to everybody that's used it. Hopefully I helped a bunch of you out. Anyway, till next time. Catches.